The larger states proceed as if we were blind. Now, Mr. Madison insists that the large states will never hurt the small states if we give up our equality in the Senate. But I do not trust you, sir. Let the large states do as they like. There are other recourses for the smaller states. We can find some foreign ally, someone of more honor and good faith who will take us by the hand and do us justice.
What Mr. Bedford has spoken is treason. As for myself, whatever may be my distress, I will never court relief from a foreign power.
Gentlemen, this bickering does not further our cause. Chair recognizes Dr. Franklin.
Thank you, General. Gentlemen. The small progress we have made in these last weeks is a melancholy proof of the imperfections of human understanding. How has it happened that we have forgotten to humbly implore the Father of Lights to illuminate our understanding? During the late contests with Great Britain, we many times offered prayers for help in this very room. And our prayers were heard, and they were graciously answered. The longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. If a sparrow cannot fall without his notice, is it probable that a great nation can rise without his aid?
I hereby adjourn this convention until July 2nd, 3 days hence. The states, upon return to General Assembly, will be prepared for their final votes on representation in the Senate.
Anything, gentlemen?
No, thank you.
Perhaps later, Mrs. House. Thank you.
Mr. Madison, we are on the brink of disaster. This convention will fracture if there's any more debate on representation.
We can still win, General. We have the vote.
The battle, yes. What about the war?
I wonder if we do have the votes.
We have Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. The small states have Delaware, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York. Maryland will split between Jennifer, who is with us, and Martin, who is with them. We will win, 6 states to 4.
Not so, I'm afraid. Pierce and few of Georgia have left for New York.
Why?
To attend Congress. In addition, Mr. Pierce is engaged to fight a duel. Mr. Hamilton, I believe, is to act as his second.
Well, that still leaves Houston and... Baldwin in the Georgia delegation. Now, Houston will vote with us. What about Baldwin?
Abraham Baldwin is new to the state of Georgia. He immigrated there 3 years ago. But he was born and bred in Connecticut.
All right. Georgia may divide along with Maryland, but we still win 5 states to 4.
We may.
No, we will. We will. I feel very confident. Mr. Jennifer is not here. How long can you wait?
I cannot, Mr. Madison. We begin at 11. My second session of this convention will come to order.
Where is Mr. Jennifer?
Mr. Madison, you are out of order.
I'm sure I don't know, Mr. Madison. Indisposed, perhaps.
Mr. President,
To recognize the delegate from Connecticut, Mr. Oliver Ellsworth.
I call the question on the issue which has plagued this House for so long. I move that in the new Senate, each state will have 1 vote.
Mr. President, I second my colleague's motion.
Very well. States will vote on Mr. Ellsworth's motion in the usual manner. Massachusetts.
No.
Connecticut.
Aye.
New York.
Aye.
New Jersey.
Aye.
Pennsylvania.
No.
Delaware.
Aye.
Maryland.
Maryland votes aye.
Mr. President, it appears as though the Maryland delegation is not fully represented. Mr. Jennifer is not here.
That has not hindered votes in the past, and neither will it now. So long as Mr. Jennifer is in Philadelphia, our rules allow Maryland's vote to be cast. Say again, Mr. President, Maryland votes aye.
So noted, Mr. Martin. Virginia.
No.
North Carolina.
No.
South Carolina.
No.
Georgia. How does Georgia vote, Mr. Houston?
Mr. President, Georgia is divided. I vote no. Mr. Baldwin votes aye.
Very well. General Assembly, 1 state absent, Georgia divided. Convention voted 5 to 5 on Mr. Ellsworth's motion. It's a tie.
Mr. President, as the delegation from Maryland is now complete, I move we vote a second time on Mr. Ellsworth's motion.
Second.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes the delegate from Maryland, Mr. Martin.
may I remind certain gentlemen that in committee of the whole, this body may vote a second time on a motion, or as many times as it wishes, but in General Assembly, it is simply not permitted. Our votes are binding and final.
Mr. Martin's point of order is correct. Tie stands.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes delegate from Connecticut.
well, we're at a place where we can't move one way or another. Do we just go home and admit we failed? Let's try a committee. Let's have 1 delegate from each state get together and try to figure out a compromise.
Mr. President,
Mr. Madison.
I am sensible for the need of compromise in some cases, but I am against this committee. It will merely delay us. Anything that can be proposed in a committee can just as easily be proposed right here.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes Mr. Dickinson.
Can it be that Mr. Madison opposes a committee because he fears that reasonable men, out of earshot of his rhetoric, will uphold equality in the Senate?
Hear, hear.
I am in favor.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes Dr. Franklin.
we are at a dead stop, Mr. Madison. It is time to compromise, sir.
To the glorious Fourth.
They're calling it the Grand Committee.
They ought to call it the Pact Committee. Look who's on it. Every small state sympathizer in the convention.
Well, Dr. Franklin is representing your state.
He is an old diplomatist. He will, as he would put it, compromise for the higher good. No, the Senate will be a non-democratic body. We've lost.
Yes.
Aye. But look how much we've won.
Won?
At the beginning of this convention, the delegates were willing to tinker with the articles. But in their most fearful nightmares of democracy, they never envisioned giving up state sovereignty. Think of it. Petulant little Delaware threatened to walk out. Then they voted for a strong national government. Why? Because you came to Philadelphia with a plan.
I hope neither of you gentlemen will be wanting a meal. I'm that short-handed now with the celebrations going on uptown and all that I can't be offering cooking now.
Thank you, no. This drinks will be fine.
Of course, you come back tonight and you'll see us at our busiest. Boy, we keep the glorious Fourth in grander fashion than any tavern in town.
No doubt, sir. Sir, tell me, where do you stand on the issue of good government?
Well, we here at the tavern don't want a king, and that's flat.
Nor shall you have one, sir. I give you my word.
And of course, we want ale kept at a fair price. I've been doing a lot of reading on these new ideas for government.
There, Mr. Madison. You see, we Americans have the advantage. We read and comprehend issues.
And I want a government that's not just for you, and not just for me, and that's even and fair for everyone. By my reckoning, that's a good government.
Would you join us, sir, in a drink to the Fourth?
That I will, sir.
To the American people, the foundation of our liberty.
Before our departure, I wish to make it clear to the House that both Mr. Lansing and myself oppose and will continue to oppose any system which has in object the consolidation of these United States into one government.
Yeah, I've made up my mind. No.
Tuesday, July 10th, 1787. My dear Mr. Hamilton, debate of the report of the Grand Committee proceeds without an end in sight. Your colleagues, Messrs. Yates and Lansing, have left the convention for New York, vowing to work against the convention. It is the first time an entire state has left. I am sorry you went away. I wish you were back. Our councils are now, if possible, in a worse train than ever. I am, sir, yours truly, George Washington.
I'm ready to ride in an hour.
Gentlemen, we have now debated the compromise report of the Grand Committee for 9 days. I, for one, have grown weary of the long-windedness of its detractors. I, therefore, call the question on the report.
Second, we are as ready to resolve the question as you are, sir.
Very well. As debated and amended, this compromise provides for a lower house which represents the states according to their population. In the upper house, each state will have 2 senators. Each senator will have 1 vote. I remind the gentlemen, his vote will be binding.
Massachusetts is divided, sir. What? Mr. Strong and I vote aye. Mr. King and Mr. Gorham vote no.
Connecticut.
Connecticut votes in favor of the Grand Committee's compromise.
Hear, hear.
New Jersey. The House welcomes back Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Would someone please give Mr. Hamilton a copy of this report? I will come to New York last. And I'll proceed with the roll call. New Jersey.
Aye.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, despite its elder statesmen being on the committee, concludes that it will vote against its report. My disappointment over this is mitigated by the fact that at least I live here in Philadelphia and can be carried to my home each night of this interminable convention.
Delaware.
Aye.
Maryland.
Aye.
Please, you can be with us for this vote, Mr. Jennifer. Virginia. No.
With exception.
Noted, sir. North Carolina.
North Carolina is in favor of the compromise.
South Carolina.
No!
Georgia.
No.
Mr. Hamilton, have you had sufficient time to read the report?
I have, Mr. President.
Are you prepared to cast New York's vote on it?
I am. New York, without hesitation, votes
Nothing.
I beg your pardon.
Nothing. Point of order, Mr. President.
Mr. Dickinson, in the middle of a vote, this seems hardly the time.
Our rules are very specific. A state, in order to be represented by a quorum, must have at least 2 delegates in the city. 2 in the city, gentlemen. New York has only 1. Therefore, Mr. Hamilton may not vote.
The gentleman from Delaware is correct. I'm sorry. With Massachusetts divided, New York ineligible, and New Hampshire absent, the compromise report passes in General Assembly. 5 states support. We've done it. And now for other business.
Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Governor Randolph.
Mr. President, I move that this convention adjourn that the large states might consider a compromise. A true compromise, not this sham which benefits only the small states.
Mr. President,
Chair recognizes Mr. Patterson.
let the large states take a day to hatch their scheme. But we will never back down from this binding vote.
This convention is adjourned until tomorrow morning.
Mr. Madison, there are still a great many issues to debate in this convention, and
You got out early this morning, Mr. Madison.
No good government can be built upon the foundation proposed by the small states. Nor will it.
I agree.
It's time to move on to other matters. The small states are fixed. We must yield on the representation issue.
At last. Someone sees the truth of the matter. The small states have compromised, gentlemen. Now we must.
You are strangely quiet, Mr. Madison.
Judge Wilson and Dr. Franklin are correct. No one could be more disappointed than myself that the convention has chosen what to me seems an unjust system. This great compromise has created a new kind of nation, one such as I had never considered. Its national government is strong and sovereign, but it has states which are also strong. Separate states, but a united people. It is neither man nor horse, but like the centaur, half of each. I don't know whether such a creature can survive in the rough and tumble of the world. But I am willing to make the hazard. I am for the compromise. I am for the United States of America. When the compromise report of the Grand Committee was approved, a key issue of the convention was decided. During the next 8 hot, humid weeks, the House debated, amended, and approved the other resolutions of the Virginia Plan in General Assembly. A committee of style refined the language of the new Constitution. I am especially fond of the preamble, not we the states, but we the people. This shows to all the world that in America, the people will govern.
This body is now ready to vote in General Assembly. Major Jackson will now read the final draft of the Constitution of the United States.
Unanimous consent of the states present, the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord, 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th.
Thank you, Major Jackson.
Mr. President,
Dr. Franklin.
I confess there are parts of this Constitution I do not yet approve, but I am not sure I shall never approve of them. Because the older I grow, the more I doubt my own judgment and pay attention to the judgment of others. When you get together a group of men to take advantage of their wisdom, of course you get all their passions and their prejudices, their errors and their selfish views. Can a perfect production be expected from this? I am astonished to find it approaching so near perfection as it does. Yes, gentlemen, yes, I consent to this Constitution, and I urge all others to do so, because I expect none better, and I'm not sure it is not the best.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. We will now vote on whether or not to accept the Constitution. Gentlemen, this vote will be binding. New Hampshire.
Aye.
Massachusetts.
Massachusetts votes aye.
Connecticut.
Mr. President, Connecticut is pleased with the compromises of this body. She votes aye.
New Jersey.
Aye.
Pennsylvania.
Aye.
Delaware.
Aye.
Maryland.
Aye.
Virginia.
Virginia votes aye. Colonel Mason is accepted.
Colonel Mason?
Mr. President, I have been wrestling with myself the last several days, and I feel duty-bound to say that I would sooner chop off my right hand than put it to the Constitution as it now stands.
But why, sir?
There's no Declaration of Rights in this document.
This comes very late, sir, when we are on the verge of concluding our business. If you feel so strongly on this point, sir, why did you not mention it sooner?
I feel that such a bill could be prepared in a few hours.
Mr. President.
Mr. Sherman of Connecticut.
We don't need a Bill of Rights in the Constitution because all the states have already got one.
Mr. Sherman is correct. We have written this Constitution with the express intent of protecting the people from...
Nevertheless, generations of Americans yet unborn will look back to us for protection of their rights. We must not fail them.
Thank you, Colonel. This convention appreciates your candor. I express my personal regret, sir, that you cannot find yourself a friend to this document.
Mr. President, I also accept myself.
But you presented the Virginia plans.
I have many reservations as to the form in which it has been cast. I know I am taking a step which may be the most awful of my life, but it is dictated by my conscience.
Your exception is noted, sir. Well, gentlemen, shall we proceed with the roll call? North Carolina.
North Carolina votes aye.
South Carolina?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Unanimously, 11 states to none, this convention has, on this day, September 17th, 1787, voted to accept as its ruling document the Constitution of the United States.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hamilton.
though I am unable to vote on the motion, I will sign the Constitution so that New York may be represented on so important a document. If I might be allowed that honor.
Indeed you may. Well, what remains for us to do is sign. This is for me a great moment. I've prayed for it, and I will continue to pray for the success of this document, for I believe it to be the hope of this country.
General, painters have found it difficult to distinguish in their art a rising sun from a setting sun. In the midst of my hopes and fears during this convention, I have often looked at the sun on the president's chair without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now I have the happiness to know it is a rising sun.